to date. And then finally, please feel free to use the chat box to ask any questions you have, or seek any clarity on anything that Matt and I have said. The odds are, if you are thinking it, and there'll be several others on the call who are thinking it too. So please do that. We quite like these things to be as interactive as possible, and we certainly want you guys to go away with as much information as you can from tonight. Simon, have you deliberately raised your hand there or not? Is that no? You can't get it down. Fine. Right, Matt, is it you who clicks through or me? I think it's probably you. There we go. So my name's Andy Fairbairn. I'm the Executive Director of Somerset Cricket Board, and presenting with me tonight is Matt Council, who's our League and Clubs Development Officer. There is a slim chance that one of my children might burst into the room at any point, and I apologise in advance for that. The aim of the webinar tonight is pretty simple. It's to help you and your club on your way in planning for the 2021 season. I appreciate it's a pretty dark and miserable January right now, but February's not far away. Then we're into March. The clocks spring forward. Before you know it, I'll be dropping catches in pre-season training, but hopefully following up with a nice beer with some friends as we look forward to the season. So we think the time is right now, with a fair bit of uncertainty that Matt and I present to you around what we think the 2021 season will look like, and hopefully give you some optimism for the summer ahead. So going through the agenda for tonight, we're going to have a little bit about where we are right now. We're going to make a few assumptions about what we think cricket may look like in April and May. And then we'll be going through some things that many of you may have already done or are about to do, but hopefully we'll also cover some things that you hadn't thought about, and that are of use for you guys to think about what to do in the run up to the season. Matt, could you click through to the next page, please? So, as things stand right now, you'll all be well aware that we are in a national lockdown until at least February the 15th. And during this period, absolutely no cricket activity can take place. Despite that negativity, I personally believe that we've got quite a lot of reasons to be optimistic for the season ahead. The three main reasons are: we're in a current lockdown now, and that is going to reduce cases significantly in the lead up to our cricket season. From the 15th of February, there certainly isn't going to be the opening of doors for us to do whatever we want. Best case scenario will be a slow reintroduction to society as we know it over a period of weeks and possibly months, which actually is all in cricket's favour leading into April and May, with hopefully very few cases. Obviously, there's a big vaccination programme rolling out, protecting our elderly and vulnerable in the lead up to the cricket season, again, which should give us optimism about returning to some sort of normality for them. And then finally, and particularly importantly, is the fact that cricket proved itself last summer that it's a naturally socially distanced sport, and it can take place with coronavirus around us, and give people enjoyment whilst not contributing to the spread of the virus. So I think cricket was looked on very favourably by the government, so we're assured by the ECB with the measures that were put in place, how clubs and players adhered to it, and we've proved that we can do it before with a lot more uncertainty than we've got now, which gives me optimism to believe that we can certainly do it again. To add to that, we've also got 11 months of experience behind us, which we didn't have in March, April, May, June last year. So we know what cricket looked like last year, and Matt will go over that again in a minute. We know what could and couldn't happen in tiers 1, tiers 2, tiers 3, and tiers 4. And we also knew what hospitality looked like and the experiences that hospitality has gone through, and how it's adapted to be fit for purpose. So many of your cricket clubs will obviously have bars and kitchens where you make some money from, and also you enable your members to socialise. And the experience that we've all had over the last 11 months, again, should enable us to plan with some sort of certainty going into the summer ahead. So with that optimism, I will pass on to Matt for the next part of the presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all well. And like Andy said, good to see so many different faces. And as also Andy said, jealous of those who've got a beer or cider in picture. So as Andy said, there is reason to be optimistic with cricket being socially distant sport. And actually, I think if you look at sport as a whole, I think cricket has done very well so far. So we managed to play quite a lot of cricket in a short space of time. And I think if you look at the winter team sports and a lot of winter sports that take place, they've been quite heavily disrupted at various points due to changes of rules, the COVID situation, because they don't have the same socially distance that we have within cricket. So getting ready for the season. So this week we will be launching our club support offer, which is our affiliation offer for clubs. So this should be landing with you by Friday. A number of clubs have already rolled over their affiliation because they didn't claim the refund last year. So that's about 50% of clubs. So that will be landing hopefully by Friday. Leagues at the moment, they're organising fixtures as normal. I think to plan for a summer, and if you don't plan for normality from a fixtures point of view, it's very difficult to scale that up at very short notice. I think one thing that leagues did exceptionally well last summer was they were able to react at short notice to get a lot of cricket organised within their competitions. So as we get close to the season, if there is a need for any adaptations, leagues will be able to do that. But at the moment, we're planning as normal, getting fixtures set up. We were on a Weppel League meeting with all the junior leagues last night, which feed into Weppel, and fixtures should be out in the coming weeks. So that's something to look forward to. Steve Gass, my colleague, has been busy setting up the Ectb women's competitions and leagues. So pretty much entries are sort of coming in at the moment, and I know he's got a number of meetings over the coming weeks just to finalise dates, etc. Next week we'll be launching our cup competition, so the Somerset Knockout Cups and Under-19 T20. For a lot of clubs for the KO Cup, you've already paid and your entry's been rolled over, so it'd be just a case of confirming that you want to continue your entry. And Under-19s, it'll be about entering for the new season. The National Village Cup is open for entries, and that's open to the end of the month. And obviously last year, hopefully many of you are aware of North Perrott's success in getting to the semi-finals of this and narrowly missing out on a trip to Lords. And as hopefully many of you saw just before Christmas, we launched 3 women and girls support offers, which are currently open for applications. We'll talk a little bit more in detail about these later. Obviously, also last week, the Ecb national programmes open for registration. So that is All Stars Cricket and Dynamos Cricket. There is a national programme seminar on Tuesday, the 9th of February. We encourage all clubs who have run this programme in the past and who are interested in running it to register and attend this. Obviously, with the COVID situation, these programs in Dynamo's case didn't launch last year, and All Stars was heavily restricted. But ultimately, it's a program that is going to run, but there will be some adaptations, and I think it's really important that clubs who are going to run this listen to this webinar, because the Ecb will go through how activator training will work. So it's likely to be a mix of a lot of online training and hopefully if we're in the position, we'll have some face-to-face in a short period of time in the build-up to the season, but also the expectations with COVID. So that's a really important one for clubs to get involved with, because obviously in 2019 we did have 2,500 children involved in those programs, so a huge participation program and really big way of getting kids involved in cricket. So sort of looking ahead to the season, I think it's fairly safe to say, whilst we're very optimistic, it would be very naive for cricket to plan that everything is just going to be like it was in 2019. I think if you listen to the news and you listen to various different experts talk at various points, social distancing is going to be around for a while. So I think any of your planning, it's a good place to start is look at where cricket was in September last year. So when we're talking about adults and training, so this is looking at training, so groups of 30 can train together in a bubble, minimizing sharing of equipment, hygiene breaks, keeping records of attendance. And one thing which happened for the very last week of September with the launch of the NHS Track and Trace app, it is a legal requirement for sporting venues to display this at venues. So some clubs would have already set this up, but that'll be a new thing for a lot of clubs. And for juniors, again, bubbles of 30. So but maximum groups were 15. So you could have a bubble of 30 split into two 15s. You could have multiple groups of 30 or bubbles of 30, sorry, spread out around the ground. But that's something to think about logistically, that some of the larger sessions that you run may not be able to run in their traditional way and might need some more thinking about and planning. So are our groups of 60, which we might have at one of our age group, now two groups of 30 at different times, different spaces, but just to think about where you are with planning. As for the game itself, I expect that most of this will be in place again. So it'd be, at the moment, arrive changed, socially distancing at all times, ball straight back to the bowler, the hygiene breaks, minimalising sharing of equipment, the running lines, and again, having the NHS track and trace. I think that is a really good point to start with, because if more things do start to open up, such as you might be allowed to open changing rooms, that's an easy thing you can add. But I think for now, it's a really good and prudent to be planning as we were for last summer from an actual game and training point of view. So what can you start doing now? So I think, as I've said, you start looking at last summer's regulations and start working out your playing offer for your members. And I think it's really important to ensure that it's inclusive and fair for all groups. So I know a number of clubs now may have 2 or 3 Saturday teams, women and girls section, junior sections, all-stars groups. And I think it's with potential it becoming a little bit harder to manage people around your ground and get due to the group sizes, is making sure that you've got a fair opportunity for all your members to be able to enjoy and partake in cricket. If you haven't done so already, start confirming competition entries, start registering for national programs accordingly. And I think one thing that we're aware of, and I think with youth cricket, and I'm sure Andy will add to this, is I think I think adult cricket proved last summer that it could get an awful lot of cricket played in a short window. So outside of the bubble leagues which were created, it's probably the biggest increase in friendly cricket I've seen, the amount of friendly social cricket which got played. So I think adults will always find cricket and will get cricket on. And I think we've just got to be very aware about youth cricket, that cricket has probably got a real opportunity in that, with winter sports being fairly decimated at the moment, and parents, and some of you will be parents who are homeschooling and your children have been cooped up indoors, that people will be looking for activity as we start to come out of this. And as things ease and we come out the other side, we're going to be in a position where cricket could be very much in the shop window. So you might need to actually start looking at who's volunteering and who's coaching, who's managing sides, who's going to volunteer to help you. So I think it's important to look at your current volunteers and who's going to continue, but also look at where you've got vacancies and look to start putting them in place. Because actually, if you can line those people up and then you can start getting the necessary DBS checks in place, which we'll talk about a bit later, you can actually reduce this mad rush which may happen as restrictions ease at various different points. I don't know if there are any questions coming in, Andy, because my screen's flashing quite a lot in the top corner.
Yeah, we had a question from Jerry about what constitutes a qualified coach, and Scott helpfully is on the call, and he said that a qualified coach would need to have a Foundation 1, Level 2 or higher qualification. That would enable them to coach by themselves, to lead a coaching session. A Level 1 or a coach support worker qualification doesn't allow an individual to lead a session, but it does enable that individual to support a training session. So it is slightly complicated. I appreciate that. If you just want to clarify someone's qualification with us in private, then we'll be able to help with that. But moving forward, fortunately, the Foundation 1 course does enable people to coach by themselves. We've had Phil come forward. He's got a concern about getting fixtures out ASAP because clubs need to plan and for a fixtures book. Just on that, Phil, and we've had quite a few chats with leagues, as you would expect. In terms of producing a fixtures book, it could be seen as quite a high risk thing to put fixtures down in on paper right now, although we've probably got a bit more certainty going into this season than we did at this point last year. But the leagues all work together to deliberately delay their entry dates for clubs so that clubs could just try to get their decisions as accurate as possible leading up to the season. And from speaking to the Wiltshire Cricket League last night, they were pleased they'd given clubs additional time because in December alone, I think there'd been 2 teams that had pulled out and an extra 3 teams who wanted to play. So that's one reason that the leagues have given a bit of an extended deadline. After the meeting we had last night with Whipple, the Bristol District Leagues, Somerset Cricket League, Wiltshire Cricket League and Gloucestershire Cricket League, I think they're in a position now where they will be releasing fixtures by the end of January. So clubs should have those by the end of January. What else have we got here? We'll talk about DBSs in a minute. Well, in fact, no, Michael's asked, does the DBS check have to be an ECB check, or if someone has an enhanced check, is that all right? Mike, it has to be an ECB check for it to be accepted in cricket, and all the DBS checks in cricket need to be enhanced. But we'll talk about DBSs in a bit. I'll tell you what, Matt, you keep going, and there's a few other questions coming in that we can answer in a little bit.
Yeah, cool, not a problem. There's one that I'll probably be able to answer. I've just picked up on that, but I'll pick it up a little bit in a minute. So, training for volunteers. So, obviously, due to lockdown, all our face-to-face courses are currently suspended. And it's one of our recognised actions that we do need to get more coaches qualified, because I think we're in a position that once we get to March, apart from those, probably I think it was about half a dozen coaches which completed their level 2 over the summer from an assessment point of view, we would have gone a whole 12-month period without qualifying any new coaches. So I think when we're in a position to start running courses again, we will be looking to prioritise running a number of courses, mainly Foundation 1 courses, but we'll be looking to try and get them at outdoor venues. Obviously a risk with the weather, but if it's outdoors, it's going to be far easier to run stuff than indoors at the moment. But unfortunately, due to the shortened window and just availability of tutors, and this would be across the country, to meet the needs of what we would normally run over a winter program, it is likely to be lower, but it is something we are very aware of, and we will prioritise when we can. But what volunteers can do now. So if you're a qualified coach, and the ECB are now starting to allow a lot more other volunteers to do this, is that if you're working with young people, is to complete your online Safeguarding Young Cricketers certificate. Anything in this presentation, by the way, if it's underlined, it's got a hyperlink, so you can click and on them, and this will take you to the page where you can get all the information about how to get onto this courses. I coach live, so I will send details out about this, but if you're a Coaches Association member, you will currently have priority window on this. But because the ECB can't run their National Coaches Conference, which they normally do at this time of year, they are running iCoach Live, which will be a series of webinars over 2 evenings on a various range of different topics across the and they'll be available for your coaches to log in. Looking at some of the cast on it, I think there's 3 Somerset professional coaches delivering on them at the moment, so there'll be probably some local faces that you would have seen at Somerset. We've got the UK coaching. They've got a range of CPD modules. Some are free, some are up to £10, but a great way for your coaches to pick up new tips, to learn and improve their craft. The Umpires Level One course, this is now online. It's available online and it is free. So if you're interested in umpiring, this would be a great course to get more umpires qualified. Same with Scorers Level One, available online and free. We've got the Cricket Grounds Maintenance Level One. So if you're involved in the ground maintenance, preparing pitches, outfields, or looking to just get involved with a little bit more, it's £25. I did this in lockdown and I learned an awful lot from it, and I've got an even greater appreciation for the work that grounds men and women do and everything they have to be engaged with. So certainly a really good course. And then for all volunteers, Sport England Club Matters, they've got a range of workshops which are all online, which should help clubs to function and run. So there's stuff on finance, budgeting, structures of membership, your legal structure, how to run players' surveys, how to change culture at your club. There are loads and loads and loads of webinars, which are all online, and courses which you can do. So they are certainly worth looking at. So I think for all your volunteers, there are stuff for them to either get themselves upskilled, but importantly with online safeguarding, get that done. And we will talk about DBSs at a later point, but it's all important stuff to try and get done at this time.
Matt, if I could just jump in there, in particular around the umpires training. It looks, having been involved with Whipple for quite a long time, I know that Whipple and the feeder leagues are looking at ways that they can increase the number of qualified umpires in the game. And I think Whipple will be really encouraging its clubs to qualify umpires, possibly with incentives from the 2022 season onwards. So as a Whipple club or an aspiring Whipple club, I would really advise you to try and get try and get some people on that Umpires Level One course now, with a view of them standing in the summer and for years to come, because I think it will benefit you over the next few years. Sorry, Matt.
No, that's absolutely fine. Are there any appropriate questions to look at this point, Andy? Or
they're all appropriate questions, Matt. So
I just meant at this time, or do we do them later?
Let's do them in a little bit. So you keep going with what you've got there.
Perfect. Right. So ground maintenance. So obviously it's been very wet recently. So some grounds teams won't be able to get actually onto their pitches at the moment. But the top link, that is the latest position from the Grounds Maintenance Association, which is formerly the IOG after their rebrand. That gives you the basics of what is permitted to be done at this stage as a volunteer or paid grounds person, but also it gives you an idea of things that you should be considering if you're able to. There is a new grounds management toolkit available, so that's another good resource for all grounds keepers. And also we will keep you updated with any changes of guidance from the GMA. This is likely to happen as we come out of this lockdown. Thinking slightly further ahead, NatWest Cricket Forces traditionally that event at the start of the season to try and get clubs getting themselves ready for the season, getting all those little odd jobs done, prepared. Details are yet to be launched, but we were advised that the details will come out in February. But just thinking ahead, it may be worth just having an idea of a get together when allowed to start getting your club to do all the little jobs to be ready for when the green light happens. And so you're in a good place to go. Just other parts on ground maintenance. Next month will be the Somerset Grounds Association AGM. There will be some guest speakers, including Scott Hawkins, the head groundsman at Somerset, and he is bringing along a friend this year to talk about various different topics. And also at that event, we will be launching hopefully some new exciting offers which will benefit cricket clubs as well. But more details will come out in the coming weeks on that. So please watch this space. On to finance. So not last week, the week before, I emailed round following the ECB's update on COVID support during this lockdown period. So those clubs who have got a rateable value, you may have seen you may be eligible for a small business grant top up. Basically, in most cases, it's not all, most cases, if you receive the grant in the past, then basically the council will pay you direct to top up that money that you claimed. In some cases, having read some of the websites, there might be a little bit more to do depending on your council area. So each of them is a link to your various council website where it details everything about business grants. I am already aware that some clubs have been paid this money already, which is great news. The ECB funding for cricket clubs, so that's their return to cricket grant. This was due to end last week, but it's now been extended until the end of March. Clubs can apply for up to £3,000 on this. If you have had funding in the past and it doesn't go up to the £3,000 limit, you can apply again. However, having spoken to various people at the ECB today about it, I think those clubs who are showing quite high levels of reserves are getting a lot of kickback on applications. So really look at that on a really need basis. Sport England funding. So a lot of clubs got the grant when the first lockdown happened, and then they updated all their schemes. And they were very much aimed at winter sport. At the moment, their small grants pot, some of the criteria has been amended and changed, so that potentially allows and enables cricket clubs to apply. But it is a link, it will take you straight there. and please read all the information around it before applying. Another thing that you may have seen before Christmas going out was the ECB's Funds for Runs program, which is in partnership with LV Insurance. Very much at the moment, it's probably fair to say that at the moment we as a county board don't know masses around it, but it is looking to try and support clubs with all-stars programs, women and girls, to try and grow the game. But there is elements of criteria around high areas of deprivation. We are expecting some more information at the moment, but I do know that some clubs have put an expression of interest form in, but more information once the fund's fully open, we will get that out as we learn a bit more. But if you click on this, you can get an expression of interest form, and you can look at it from there. I think at this point I'll be passing over to Andy, but
there's a fairly pertinent question from Phil around, and I think I'm getting this right, around should clubs with a bit of cash feel guilty or / not apply for grants? I don't think they should feel guilty at all, but I don't think that they should be applying for COVID-related grants. The COVID-related grants are there for clubs who are really struggling, predominantly as a result of coronavirus, obviously, and they really need this funding in order to continue to exist or to get them back into a position that they were pre-COVID. I think there'll be several clubs out there who actually, and good on you, and is no blame attached whatsoever, are in a better financial situation than they were in pre-COVID, just because of the grants that has been made available primarily from the government. So that's great for cricket, that money's come into cricket and will be spent wisely, I'm sure. But in terms of bidding for these grants, because it's available, I think take them in the spirit that they're meant, which is really to help clubs who have been affected by coronavirus. So hopefully that clears that up. Just looking at a couple of other questions. There's one about the QR code and where do you go to register and what do you do? But that's been answered by several people. So thank you for that one in particular. Steve, when will the level 2 coaching examination take place from last year's course? We will do those as soon as we're able to do those, Simon. So realistically, it will probably be the summer now, and our tutors and assessors will come out to clubs to deliver those, or not deliver them, to observe and assess at clubs. There's one around what age do you need to be to do an umpiring course? The online umpiring course, you need to be 13 or over. Is there a cost for them? The umpiring online ones are free. I would have thought the
Scorers is free as well.
Yeah, okay, so they're both free, which is good. And then there was a couple about Football Mat, which is right up your street. So one from Scott around the use of changing rooms, because that changed slightly once the cricket season had finished, didn't it?
Yes and no. So at the start of the season, let's put it this way, the FA guidance compared to cricket, and this is with me with a vested interest as a Football League chairman, it was very chalk and cheese. So the cricket was fairly black and white, and the FA guidance was wishy-washy at best around certain things, where on changing rooms, for example, I think the word was you should arrive changed, you can use them if in line with government guidance, and then the government guidance on the website said you shouldn't use them. When football stadia opened and rugby stadias opened, there was after the second lockdown, there was a change in policy from the government, which said basically that changing rooms could now start to be used if required, if under government guidance on gatherings indoors, and that they could be facilitated socially distanced. So all a bit complicated. So a lot of clubs in my experience started to use it there on a maximum of 6 if you could socially distance, but then you would have to clean in and out from there. I think where we are, it'd be something that I would imagine the ECB will try and work with government on at that time. But I think opening a changing room would be far easier than organising how a match day might run and how many volunteers you need. So at this stage, that's where football got with it. It's caused an awful lot of debate, and I've seen awful lot of emails which have bounced back between various organisations. I've also picked up one here about the Somerset FA and football. So I think where you are, and I think this was a challenge, is once football was given the green light to play, football clubs, quite rightly, like cricket clubs, wanted to start playing. So I don't know, as soon as football is permitted from a friendly level, clubs will start to play. I think one thing which happened this year is because of all the timelines, it just felt like people went a little bit earlier. So it's not something that you're ever going to get any control over. People will choose what sport they will play at whatever time. And I think it's also worth noting that if you think about the end of last season, we were playing bubble cricket, wasn't probably a massive amount on the competition. And people might have been thinking, right, if I go to football now, I'm going to be going to play all winter, we're going to have a full season, and I'll go back to cricket. Obviously, that hasn't happened, and there's probably been less football played than there was cricket. But actually, I think that's a behavioural thing that you think about what you're playing for at that time. I think if we're playing a normal cricket season in league fixtures, people are probably going to be more loyal to cricket like they have been in the past. I don't know if anything else has come through.
I think we can chat through the others at the end. So we'll keep going with the presentation. Thanks for the questions, guys. They're very good. Please keep them coming in, and we will go through all of those at the end. So Matt's kind of spoken about generating income, I'd suggest, in terms of grants and funding. But I just want to touch a little bit onto the financial management of the clubs and the day-to-day of that. There's some really useful resources out there for treasurers, but also for people with an interest and sitting on committees at clubs. And we've detailed those at the bottom under resources. Matt's already touched on Club Matters, which is a really useful website for volunteers at clubs. They've got 3 workshops that focus solely on finance of community clubs and are well worth looking at. And then there's a document which is really useful, the NatWest Club Budgeting Excel spreadsheet. You may have a really capable treasurer in place, and if that is the case, brilliant. If you don't necessarily, and you've got a well-wishing volunteer, then actually that budgeting template could be really, really useful for you. It now allows you to budget annually, break it down into your monthly budget, and then also input your actual monthly budget as well, so you can see how you're doing throughout the year. So I'd really recommend having a look at that. In terms of budgeting for the season, I'm sure many of you have spent quite a long time doing that. But just a couple of things that we wanted to raise, and we would encourage you all to cautiously budget for the season ahead, which I'm sure you are all doing after the season we've just had. So bar and food sales, something to pay particular attention to. Membership, sponsorship, and then reducing fixed and variable costs. So with your membership, just having a little think about how many people you think will become a member of your club this year. hopefully it will be a full enough season for you not to need to reduce the membership or offer a rebate or whatever you might have done last year. It may be, and Matt and I, maybe we're foolishly optimistic, but we can see the demand for the cricket season actually being really high this year. There will have been a lot of people who've had a pretty naff winter, pretty dark winter with little activity. If they're a rugby player, hockey player, football player, they haven't been able to play their sport. And there may be that cricket benefits from a desire for people just to get out and socialise and play sport. So it could well be that membership increases. Appreciate that flies in the face of me suggesting you should budget cautiously. But one thing I want to touch on with membership is that there will be some people who've had a particularly tough time, and their disposable income is not what it was. So as a club, it may be you wish to have a couple of options there for people to pay in instalments, and also a line around if anyone is really struggling to pay for the membership, that they can approach you in confidence to discuss this. I'm sure your clubs would be the same as us in that you'd never want finance to stand in the way of somebody playing the game. In terms of sponsorship, again, I'm sure you guys have thought of this, but many traditional sponsors of cricket clubs, such as breweries or pubs or cafes or restaurants, will have had a really rough ride recently. So it may be that sponsorship money just isn't there. However, there will have been a lot of businesses who've had a pretty good time in the last 11 months. So just thinking about those businesses that have had a good time, and maybe there's an opportunity to approach those and get some new sponsors on board, whilst obviously keeping your communication with your old sponsors. So it could be an opportunity to benefit from that. And then once you know what your income's going to be, or you've got a pretty good guess, you can start to plan your expenditure and work out, is it at an appropriate level, or do you need to cut some costs? And working out what costs to cut will be down to you. Matt, do you want to move on, please? On to safeguarding. So every club for the start of the season, as has been the case over the last couple of years, will need to have a fully qualified welfare officer, and that job title will be changing imminently to club safeguarding officer. So every club will need to have an individual in place to take on that role, which is a vital role for cricket. They're the person that people at your club can go to if they've got any concerns, and that individual will know what to do in that situation, and in particular how to raise it up the line or who to ask for further assistance. So if your club doesn't have a safeguarding officer at present, and there aren't many clubs that don't, but please get somebody in place, and then we need to make sure that those individuals' training is up to date. And as Matt's touched on, now is the perfect time to do this. So there are three things you need to do. One is attend a Safe Hands training course, and they are online at the moment. The link is there to book onto that. You need to attend an online Safeguarding Young Cricketers course. Again, Matt and Brian Hoyle can help you to get onto that. And then you need to have an in-date Ecb DBS check. They can all be done online. It isn't going to take too much time. Now is the time to get that done, and make sure that your safeguarding officer has got the qualifications so we'll see them through the cricket season. Matt, could you move on, please? On to DBS. We've had a couple of people who've messaged about that so far. So I appreciate there'll be individuals out there who've got 2 or 3 DBSs from other organisations, but each organisation will only ever accept their own DBS. So cricket isn't being standout by saying that. So for volunteers to work in cricket, they will have to have a Ecb enhanced DBS check. Now, as a volunteer, these are free to obtain, and they're very easy to obtain at the moment. It's all done online. So all the individual will need to do is email either Brian or Matt with those 4 bits of information there, Matt and Brian will get back to them, and the verification will be done via a video call. And then to make things a bit easier as well, there's a box that you can tick, which will automatically renew your DBS when it's about to expire. So it really is a simple thing to do now, simpler more than ever, because it can be done online as well. But there are some roles that I just want to remind you of that need checks, and there is a link there in the first paragraph so that you can see the roles in cricket that do need checks. But captains need to have a DBS check, and I'd also advise you that your vice captain should have a DBS check, because should your captain not be playing, I assume that vice captain would step up to the role, and they need to have a check in place. Your age group managers, your coaches as well, and I know that Matt touched on it earlier, but have a real think ahead about some parents who may be assisting during the season, whether that's at your junior evenings or whether that's on match days. And it's better to be safe than sorry. Get those guys DBS checked too, so that come the summer, if you need a parent just to help out, then you're okay and they are okay to do so. Again, it's a pretty good time to do all of this in a dark January when we're in lockdown. Matt, could you move on, please?
Just to jump in there, Andy, because it probably answer a couple of questions which have come in around DBS. At the moment, due to lockdown and the verifications having to be done via video call, it is currently only ECB and county board staff which can, in the first instance, set them up and then complete the verification. So if you're a normal club verifier at this moment, your account will basically be inactive. So if you log in, you'll probably get a weird message saying you can't do anything. So it's nothing personal. Just make sure if you've got anyone, send them to myself or Bride, but also Scott and Steve can also do them as well. So pretty much our team can do them. So at the moment, it might take a little bit off your load, but it is, with it being online verification, it doesn't take too long. So if you do have any people you need to do it, get that information to us and we will get it sorted for them, so they've got no excuse to not have one.
Thanks, Matt. I think we're on to the last two slides now, guys. So the finish line is in sight. But we thought it was quite important that we stress to you all the importance that your clubs play within your membership and also within your community, about the enjoyment and kind of mental health benefits that cricket clubs and the social side of it in particular has on people. And I was talking to a friend at the weekend actually who said he'd never really realised how much he enjoyed playing sport for the social side of it, and it's only when it's taken away from you that you really realise what you value. So in terms of that, we think it's really important that as clubs, you spread some optimism to your members, but also to your communities about the cricket season and the summer ahead. So kind of two reasons for that, really. One, it could give people it could cheer people up during these pretty dark times. It can give them something to look forward to, something to plan for, something to be excited about. But then also it can benefit your cricket club because people will start to switch on to playing cricket again, taking their children to your cricket clubs, or even just coming to watch the club, and who knows, maybe some sponsorship comes out of the back of it. So we think it's really important that you tell people that you're looking forward to the season and you're going to be open for business and ready for action. How you do that is totally up to you as a club. Quite a few clubs have had a bit of success with video messages from their chair or committee members during lockdown. They seem to go down pretty well. You've obviously got some different groups who you may wish to communicate to in different ways. So you probably communicate to your adult members in a different way than you would to junior members or the community or your supporters or your sponsors. I think in particular, young people, and I'm a father of two young people, I think There will be a bit of nervousness around young players going back to sport. They won't have been going to clubs for quite some time. They won't have been socialising with other young people. And there is just a bit of nervousness that builds up around that. So an awareness of that, I think some communication to them and their parents nice and early so they can prepare for coming back to your cricket club, and just making sure it really is a friendly place for them to come to, and that the first couple of sessions with them are really enjoyable for every single participant, because there will be some nerves there amongst young people. Just touching on the playing survey, it's a pretty good time of year again. First of all, to engage with your players and your members, but also to get some feedback from them about what they want for the season, whether it's in terms of playing, training, or what you stock behind your bar, or your playing kit or whatever. Actually asking your membership and your players what they want will make your club a better place for them to be. Matt, do you want to move on? So the final slide of the evening, and there's a few more links for you. I think Matt touched on our women and girls support offers that we have launched. We've got 3 offers there to grow the female game in the county. One around under-11s cricket, utilising dynamos. One around starting women's softball sections. So I think we've got 34 clubs in the county now with a women's softball section. And they've all started up in the last 4 or 5 years and had a lot of success. And the whole club has benefited from that as a result. So if you're interested in that, then click on that link and have a little look at that, and we'd be delighted to help you launch a section. And then starting a women's hardball section. So if you've currently got a softball section, it may be that some of your women want to move into hardball, or it may be you just want to start the hardball section from scratch, who knows. But we're really, really keen to support clubs to do that. We'll help in terms of sending coaches to your club, equipment packages, marketing support, and a few other little bits too. So please do click on those and get in touch if you need some help with your women's and girls sections. As Matt touched on a bit earlier, we've got a series of webinars coming up. So this one's the first in the series, but we've got some more bespoke ones coming up, including kind of developing welcoming atmospheres at your club. The Ecb funding streams moving forward will be around developing welcoming atmospheres and family-friendly clubs. And then there's a couple of other ones there that are a little bit more bespoke that we will advertise in due course, but just to make you aware of now. The county grant scheme is coming up in the near future, certainly in the next couple of months. That will be kind of the ECB's evolution of the small grant scheme, which didn't run last year, but had run for, I don't know, about 8 years before that. The clubs could bid for between £1,000 and £4,000 for things such as covers or site screens or developing social environments. So the county grant scheme is an evolution of that, ultimately linked to welcoming environments and family-friendly clubs. But I think it could be a significant amount within the county. So certainly something for your clubs to look for, and when it comes out, think about some projects that you could utilise. And then just finally, and I know I touched on it last year at our club road shows, but we're really, really proud in Somerset of the disability cricket offers that we've got going. We've got a really good physical disability club within the county that has 2 teams. We've got a visually impaired club within the county. And then also we run disability hub clubs around the county. We've got 6 of those going on, weekly sessions for people to come to, socialise, get physically active, and ultimately enjoy playing some cricket. So we're really keen that we get our cricket clubs involved with disability cricket, or at the very least promoting the opportunity to be involved in disability cricket. So we're asking all of our clubs to come forward and either put themselves forward to be a Disability Champions Silver Club, which is pretty simple, to be honest. Your role is around promoting the opportunities that exist in the game. and not too much more than that. So it's letting people know about the opportunities that are out there. And then the Disability Champion Gold Clubs, we're asking you to help us create some opportunities for disabled people to play in. So that would be putting on some sessions at your club. We would help with coaching and financing, but we're just looking for venues and clubs to assist with that. So just a couple of things there for you to be aware of. And if that's something you're interested in, then please click on those links and register your interest. But in terms of the formal presentation, that's it from us. Matt, have there been a few more questions that have come in? You're on mute, Matt.
Sorry about that. So we answered the DBS. We've got one on any news on the ECB playing survey. You'll be the expert on that one.
Shall I touch on the playing survey?
Yeah, you can do that now because the rest all sort of follow on.
Okay, so John, the news on the ECB playing survey is disappointing, John, unfortunately. So the ECB has 7,000 respondents to the survey. Usually when they do it, they have about 20,000. And one thing they didn't do, which was slightly frustrating, is they didn't break it down by the level of cricket that individual played. And the reason that made things a bit tricky is when people answered what sort of overs they wanted to be playing, or did they want tees or not, it would have helped to know if that player was playing in the higher echelons of league cricket or the lower echelons, because it bunged all the answers in together and actually nothing was particularly comprehensive. I asked for a specific breakdown from Somerset and there were 220 responses within Somerset. We did manage to break it down per league that the players played in, but we only had about 40 or 50 players per league. So the robustness of the data was limited, as well as the actual data itself being quite complicated to understand. So as an example of the sort of data we've had before, or sort of responses we've had when we've gone out with a survey. So before the season started in 2020, we went out with a survey to players to ask them their thoughts on the season ahead, and we had 1,000 responses, which gave us some really robust data to go to our leagues with to then base decisions on for the season ahead. So that response was absolutely fantastic. And at the leagues meeting last night, Matt and I offered our services to the leagues to do a similar thing for them, should they wish, in terms of a player survey, because we think we can get much higher responses locally for that. So hopefully that answers your question, that it was quite disappointing, the ECB one, but it maybe we go out with some local ones, if not for this season, certainly for 2022.
The next one was a question around DBS checks, around scorers and umpires being listed as ECB regular roles, and what if the scorer and umpire is a role filled by members of the batting side. This only applies to appointed umpires and your club scorer. So if it's that one person who goes for that team and is going to do it for the whole game, the whole time, not players within the side. So if you did that, you'd probably be getting most of your people DBS check from there. One question about fixtures. When will they be out? Will they be out by February? And there's been a reply from Amanda at Somerset League saying they'll be out by early February. A question.
Sorry, Matt, I'll just try and expand on that. So I think Whipple, Bristol and District, Somerset Cricket League, their fixtures should be out in the next couple of weeks. The Mid Wessex League, I had a chat with Richard earlier. If their fixtures aren't out at the moment, I know that they've done a lot of work on them and they've been planning on them, so I'm sure they'll be out in the near future. The youth leagues, I think the Taunton and District Youth League, they're planning on coming out with the fixtures a bit closer to the season, because I had a chat with Amanda today. I'm not too certain on the North Somerset and the Bath and District League at the moment, or the Bristol and District Youth League. So apologies for that.
Yeah, then the next one is a thank you from Edgar Herridge at Long Sutton, to the SEB league committees and volunteers at every club for getting cricket played last season. He's raised a hypothetical question at the moment. If COVID erodes the season in 2021, can I put in a plea that there's something on each game for as long as possible, i.e. promotion and relegation, even if it's 1 up, 1 down, because this has definitely impacts on players' willingness to play. This was something that was discussed last night, and all leagues are planning for promotion and relegation as were. There was a bit of hypothetical, what happens if we start here and what happens if we start there, and it was felt actually at this point to plan that minutiae with not actually knowing what's going to happen is very difficult, but all the leagues were very keen to ensure that there is a form of promotion and relegation on cricket to ensure that it is competitive as possible. I think that is fair to say, wasn't it, Andy?
Yeah.
Then just a couple of questions around, is the presentation going to be made available? Yes, it is. So at some point tomorrow, I will circulate both the presentation slides and the video, so people can watch it again at their heart's content and listen to our dulcet tones. And then
Chris Giles, thank you. He just got in touch to let me know that the Bristol Youth Cricket League will be issuing fixtures in March and April, planning for a normal season with their new tier system per age group. So I think that's broadly in line with the Taunton District Youth League about when they're looking to release theirs. Chris has asked a question about what's the likely amount of overs per match to be. We can't answer that. That is with the leagues. I don't think that's been decided on necessarily. I think there's a few AGMs still to be had and a few discussions around that to be had. Yeah, so I won't go into that now, but that's certainly something for players to raise with their clubs, to raise with their leagues. Thank you to Rich, who said that Mid Wessex fixtures went out at the end of last week to league reps and all primary contacts, which is good. And Amanda's just mentioned around overs, Somerset will be the same as last year unless anything gets changed at EGM. Brilliant. So I think, unless you've got anything else, Matt? No,
I'm done.
Brilliant. Guys, thanks ever so much for joining the call tonight. Thank you so much for what you do at your clubs and within your communities. Please, as always, get in touch with myself or anyone from Somerset Cricket Board if we can help in any way. It is what we are here to do. And enjoy the build up to the season, and let's really hope that we get a full season and a really enjoyable one at that. So all the best, guys, and thank you very much for joining.
Thanks, mate.